This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
Welcome back to the show. We are honored to be back here with our guest, Dr. Lisa Johnson. And in this episode, we continue to hear her describe the story in her memoirs titled My Relationship with Oprah, My Own Evolution of Restorative Justice. In previous episodes of her story, Lisa has described her ongoing recovery from a traumatic sexual assault in 1980. Now, at the time, detectives found the blue denim bag that was used in her crime at the scene of the murder of Hammond police officer. Then the detectives used hypnosis to help her recall details. For example, license plate, assailant's gold tooth that she saw, and her items left in the car. She described her own father being present when she was being hypnotized by detectives to protect her and the integrity of the investigation and the whole legal process. Now, 20 years later, I said 20, she would be subpoenaed to testify when the Innocence Project accepted Larry May's case. That's Larry May's case, and petitioned to have DNA evidence examined. Now, on July 9th, 2001, May's files petition for DNA testing was performed in 2001 and excluded May's as a source of the biological evidence from the rape kit. So now on 9/11, 2001, Lisa was working in her role at Amy Beale High School. Lisa was responsible for the emotional and social well-being of the student body, providing individual, group, plus family counseling, and partially all billable through Medicaid. Now, she also helped create a gay straight alliance and later advised a group of freshmen. So let's talk a little bit more about the time you spent at ABHS, which is, of course, Amy Beale High School. Please. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you. The interesting thing to me was the what was happening with Larry Mays and this legal situation was all going on in the background while I was working at the school that focused on restorative justice.
Yep.
I had never heard of the word restorative justice before. And in the first couple of years at the school, I learned about what they believed in, and they were
Yep.
organizing the whole education system around teaching kids how to change the context, how to change the situations that cause some of the social problems that we see in life by putting your energy, your time, the teaching kids to put their talents to work to make the world a better place. This is exactly what I was doing most of my life. Since 1980, when I had my own experience with the legal system, I started putting my work, my experience to work to help other people. And here I was in a high school that was
Yep.
carrying on this philosophy and naming it as restorative justice. So I thought justice had been done in my case because the men who had assaulted me went to prison.
Yeah.
And I believed that I was taking that experience and using it to help other people. So in the background, while I'm learning about restorative justice and teaching other people about restorative justice and doing things like creating the Gay Straight Alliance and being an advisor for kids in the high school. And it was part of my job to create a context where the school was using these concepts to correct behavior rather than punish children for misbehavior. So Amy Beale was a Stanford graduate, and she had died while she was fighting apartheid. And so the kids we're learning about apartheid and that kind of social justice in other countries, as well as Hitler and the Holocaust, and the Vietnam War, and some of the things that typical American high schools don't teach about in
Mm-hmm.
history, in justice. So I really learned a lot about restorative justice and repair. I learned how to manage student crises that I had never had to deal with before, including things like kids that were suicidal or kids that were harming themselves. I remember one of the students kind of teaching me about self-harm and coming to me and talking to me about her experience with using pain as a way of managing her emotions.
Mm.
I also experienced exploring people who had been in adoption issues, kids who had lost their parents and were struggling to survive, kids that are being taken away. Had my first experience with somebody calling me on the phone and saying, I want to kill myself. And
Wow.
I have a gun and I can do it.
Oh,
And I was on the phone with this kid and dialing 911 at the other side and asking for the help to come in and make sure that he didn't die.
oh,
So some of those experiences were really amazing and dramatic and
oh,
all at the same time when I was parenting my own child. You know, after 10 years of trying to have a baby, I was pregnant with my son on 9/11, gave birth to him, and I was working at the school, and it was a lovely place to work because I could bring him to staff meetings, and my babysitter was close by, so I could take him. I could go at home and nurse on lunch hours, and he was just a toddler while I was working at this school. And I really believed in what they were doing, that they were teaching these people, and I imagined, I dreamed of my son being the kind of person who grew up uh, in at a school like this who cared about these kinds of things, you know, that I really put a lot of energy. The attacks on 9/11 really focused my attention on creating a world where my son is a part of this healing process, where my son becomes a part of the restorative justice that I see in the world. So I really was doing everything in my power to create this context in which a community could heal and make the world a better place. You know, I had a lot of hopes on 9/11, believe it or not, even though I was watching a lot of tragedy around me.
and by the
So
way, that's right. That was, I remember the story. And, for those that don't know about your son and being pregnant and all, but I just can't only imagine. There's just so much going on in the world, right? And wow, I give you so much credit. And there's a lot more to talk about. Do you want to get into like the response of the motion to test the DNA and all that?
sure, yes.
Yeah, so like the new prosecutors, right? They contacted you and they revealed that the police had hypnotized you prior to your identification of Mays and Hill from the photographic lineup. So this is a fact that's never been disclosed to the defense. So explain all this. This is crazy.
So while I was working at Amy Beale High School, I received a phone call from the Lake County, Indiana prosecutor's office telling me, so up until this point, I really didn't know, even on 9/11 and those kinds of things, the stuff that was happening, the petition that from 96, I mean, the Innocence Project, he contacted the Innocence Project in 1996. I didn't find out about that
Yeah.
until 2001, 2002, when I was contacted by the prosecutor's office to indicate that they had opened this case and that the DNA didn't match either of the men
Mm-hmm.
who were convicted in the crime. And I was here working with them, and and during the conversation on the phone, I just admitted that I had been hypnotized by the police officers, and they said, "What? You were what?" And I said, "Yeah, that they hypnotized me to help me remember the evidence that I had transposed some of the numbers of the license plate number
Yeah.
of the car when I called it in." And so the hypnosis helped me remember the license plate number more effectively and therefore identify a lot of the evidence that was left in the car at the scene of the crime when the police officer was
Yeah.
killed. So the blue bag was left at the Holiday Inn where the police officer was killed, and a lot of my belongings were in the car
Oh,
that was used as the getaway car. And one of the hubcaps, it turns out, was left also at the scene of the Holiday Inn. So there's all this evidence that connects the Holiday Inn and the killing of the Hammond Police Department with the evidence of my crime in the car, the blue bag, but the DNA didn't match in the rape kit. Well,
oh,
and when I look at this, that
yeah.
doesn't mean these things didn't happen. The evidence that
No.
convicted these people
Mm-hmm.
was still there. Just because they didn't leave DNA evidence behind when they raped me, I don't see that means that they didn't do it. However, because of DNA evidence is shiny, it's exciting, it's interesting, it's new technology. And when the DNA didn't match, and then they learned about the hypnosis, which really happened, these things really happened.
Yeah.
Um, that was enough evidence for them to overturn May's conviction, to release him from prison, and he
Wow.
sued the Hammond police officers for wrongful imprisonment. When I got called to testify, I volunteered to go back to Chicago to testify in this suit. May's against
Oh,
the Innocence Project and May's against the Hammond police officers. Because, in my opinion, first of all, if the wrong people went to prison, I wanted these men to be found exonerated. I really
yeah.
believe in the legal system. However, I don't really believe that that's what happened, because the things like my father was present with me during the hypnosis. He sat there and made sure that they did not manipulate my memory. I remembered the images in the photographs and the lineups faster than most, once I looked, faster than most people, because the hypnosis helped me relax. And then by the time I was contacted by one of the detectives, and that the one of the detectives, so the police first, I admitted this to the prosecutors, and then they sent a detective out to interview me in Albuquerque, bringing with them the lineup pictures and the mug shots that were used at the time of the original investigation, the evidence from the files.
Yeah.
And when this detective came and interviewed me here in Albuquerque, she showed me the pictures, and to be honest, I absolutely remembered all the pictures. And I was like, "Boop, this is the one. This is the guy." And they showed me the picture of the lineup. Boop, that's the guy. And she said she had never seen anybody so quickly
Yeah.
remember 30 years later the images of these people that I had spent 45 minutes with.
Wow.
Well, trauma cements that memory, and then the hypnosis disconnected it from the trauma so that I could remember those practices. I had then since had EMDR training, which
Mm-hmm.
is eye movement desensitization and
Patient.
reprocessing,
Mm-hmm.
so that I could help other people overcome the impact of trauma on their own trauma. When I went through my own EMDR training, it further helped me heal that visceral reaction that happens when you remember a traumatic event. That's the point of EMDR. So while I went through the training, I processed my own memory of this event, and I disconnected that visceral feeling that comes when you think about somebody pointing a gun in your face and telling you to do things you don't
Ah.
really want to do. So that both the hypnosis and the are similar components in terms of relaxing your body, relaxing your mind, so that from a relaxed place, your higher order mentalization can process the emotional experience. So because I had had this training, by the time the detective came to interview me, I was pretty like, yeah, that's the guy. Boop, no big deal for me to look at the pictures again. I didn't know yet what it was going to feel like to be in place in face to face with somebody. And when I did the deposition, I did not have to go face to face with Larry Mays. He was not in the interviews. My dad went back.
Oh,
So once
wow.
again, my dad wanted to be there to support me. So
Oh my
by
goodness.
this time, my dad was living in Sacramento, California, and I was living in Albuquerque. Chicago is where this all happened. So we'll go from there.
Well, thank you for sharing this. And I can't believe this because there's so much. You mentioned all the mug shots, the picture lineup, right? And that was one of the detectives that came to Albuquerque, you said, to interview you, right? And your
Yeah, this is
father.
the one newer detective, but yes,
Oh,
not the
okay.
ones original detectives. Uh-huh.
Got it. And you mentioned
So
your father wanted to be there to support you. I just cannot believe he did this. Share a little more details about this. He actually flew. How did he tell me his backstory and what happened? Because this is fascinating.
so my dad's probably in his 70s, 80s by now in this part of the story, 96, 2000, right? He was born in 1927, so he had to be 83, 84, 85 years old. And my dad was living in Sacramento with my mom and all
Hmm.
my siblings who all live out there in Sacramento. They had all moved to Sacramento to follow my sister, who's going to come to our interview next week, by the way, Jill. We'll have my sister here to talk a little bit about what it's been like for her to witness me
Yeah.
going through all these
Mm-hmm.
things, assuming she's feeling well enough. But again, another circle of support. My father was there for me, and he came back from Sacramento. He insisted that he wanted to come, volunteered to come because he was present during the hypnosis and he wanted to make sure that the powers that be, whether it's the Innocence Project or the detectives, that they knew that even though these detectives hypnotized me to help me with remembering the details of the event, that he didn't manipulate my mind, didn't manipulate the evidence. My dad was really strong believer in the legal system and the justice system and in protecting the people who were being accused as well as the people who were being assaulted. You know, my dad really believed in social justice. I think my parents had a social justice marriage, to be honest. We can get into that another time, but so he volunteered to come back to Chicago with me and to sit by my side. By this time, my son was a toddler, so he got to
Mm-hmm.
spend some time with my son together. And my dad, because he grew up in Chicago, my family story goes back to the Chicago fire. My dad took me to the house that he grew up in Rogers Park, where he lived, and we visited some old family friends. And my husband's family, who still lived in that part of Northwest Indiana, got to spend time with my son and my husband and my father. And as far as I knew, I came, I testified, I spoke the truth about what happened to me and left, trusted the judicial system to do the right thing. And so the right thing ended up being that they found in favor of Larry Mays, that he
Wow.
was exonerated for the crimes committed against me. And in the end, he was awarded $9 million for wrongful imprisonment.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. What a story. I mean, and I've heard part of this in the past. You know, we've been speaking for quite a few months now, and just there's still so many more twists and turns that you keep bringing in, and I'm learning, so much. My goodness. And then you go and take your whole life and turn it around to help others like you, which is pretty amazing what you did and have done and continue to do.
Mhm, mhm. So when I came back, Amy Beale, I worked there for a couple more years. But what happened was I was working through Children's Psychiatric Center at University of New Mexico Hospital
Mm-hmm.
as a contracted provider. And I was working at a charter high school that couldn't really use my degree as a marriage and family therapist for social work were funding, and so they needed to find another person who could do the job that I was doing and bill under this under school social work because I'm a marriage and family therapist, not a social worker. So they couldn't use social work funds to hire me outright. And the university, they changed my position enough that they used up my contract before the end of the year. And I was faced with having to make a decision about going back to work in the clinic full time or work part time and finish my dissertation. So I applied for a educational leave of absence from the University of New Mexico, and they turned me down so that I could finish my dissertation. All along, I had been taking one class at a time, and by the time I was pregnant with Jacob, I had finished all the coursework for my PhD, but I hadn't done the dissertation yet. And so I didn't really think I could work full time in the clinic and finish my dissertation at the same time. So I
Mm-hmm.
asked for educational leave to finish my dissertation. And when they said no, I decided to go ahead and quit my job and make an attempt to go into private practice so that I could finish my dissertation. Luckily, my husband also worked at the university, and so we had the stability of his income. But my private practice immediately took off, even though I intended to only work part-time. I've been in full-time private practice pretty much from the get-go. I hit the ground running when it came to going into private practice. And I will tell you, I really like working for myself. You know, my boss really understands me. And since 2004, I have worked for myself, and my boss really loves, she just believes in me and she wants to make sure that I do the best work I possibly can. And so I've taken that experience. The other thing that happened is I lost my childcare provider at the same time. She had to
Oh,
quit because she was ill, and it turns out that she had lung cancer and she ended up passing away. So Jacob's, childcare provider passed away, and he got into a full-time daycare center just blocks away from my house, and I could bike him to and from the childcare center, and he could go, my husband could go to work at the university, and it was blocks away from the school he was going to go to, and I got an office just a block away from his elementary school. So once I started private practice, I could walk my son to school and then walk one block across the street to go to work all day long, get done, go pick him up from school, walk him home, bike him home. My husband would come home from the university and pick him up. I could work where I wanted to. I lived where I wanted to. We had this really close community of people. I started attending the church or a long time, 90s, and really created a community where there was a lot of love and support for me and for my son. And we really took those experiences of changes, losing your job and turning it into, oh, I'll start a private practice, or losing your childcare provider and moving into some place right there by the school. And so it really did help, like the challenge. I have a lot of resilience factors going on in my life, and that's partly what we'll talk about with my sister is some of those resilience
and
factors.
you said she's coming on next week?
Next week she'll come on, yeah. Assuming
Wow.
she's feeling well. She has Parkinson's disease now, and so if she's not feeling up to it that day, we'll do it the week after. But we'll plan for her to be there. I'll have two different interviews for us to work on with that.
Oh my
So
goodness. Oh wow. Wow, wow, wow. Okay, so what else? We have a lot more to talk about here. And I know we only got 3.5 minutes left. So did you want to just kind of roll out a little into, why, these stories are great and you're putting them into your memoirs? I mean, it's part of who you are, what you went through, and hence you're still doing so much. Wow.
Mhm. Mhm. So the DNA technology, I'm just going to tell you this part of it that excluded maize from the evidence. Um, I mean, I again that there was other police misconduct in this process that ended up being overturned because not only of me testifying about being hypnotized, but withholding evidence. Somebody had said in prison that they understood, they thought somebody else had done the crime, that there was just information that the police didn't reveal to the defense. And as they looked deeper and deeper into the case, they discovered more and more evidence of police misconduct in this case. And so my story about the hypnosis was really just a portion of the evidence that was used to undo the crime, the charges against Mays. Now Hill was the kid who was 17 years old at the time of the crime against me. I was 18,
Wow.
17 years old. This I thought the situation was over when Mays was found not guilty, and I started writing this story back then. But that was even before Hill had already been released on
Yeah.
parole by the time Mays was released from prison. And so when he learned that Mays had won $9 million, he decided that he should do the same thing and petition for his own exoneration. And we will talk later about what happened next, which of course, I didn't know any of this that was happening. But the next thing that happened once Hill petitioned for his own case to be examined, then the Fraternal Order of Police in Hammond, Indiana, put up $50,000 to try to find out who killed the Hammond police officer. And
Yeah.
since there was plenty of evidence pointing both to Hill and Mays and another person named Pierre Claudette to being the responsible for the murder of the Hammond police officer. Their attention, the Fraternal Order of Police's attention, turned towards Hill and Mays once again. And I thought the story was over in 2009 when Mays was awarded, or 2003 when Mays was awarded $9 million, but it didn't finish. 2005 was when Hill came back to say, well, I want to be found not guilty too. It is just mind-boggling to me, because there's that part of me that thinks, did I do something wrong? Is there any place? I mean, I think it's been my experience, everybody who's been a victim of a crime wonders, what did I do to cause this situation? And I think it's our attempt to try to get control over things that feel like they're out of our control.
Yeah.
We look for places where we maybe are responsible. And in this situation, I still, my job is to show up and tell the truth. And even when the truth points to evidence that hurts other people, I guess, like the police officers. I'm also kind of disgusted by the amount of money that has gone into this back and forth. The amount of not just the money that people were awarded.
I know.
Not just that. How much did all of these lawyers and police officers and well, even not just walk away with, but how much did we invest in the legal system arguing over this or that? That's really, I mean, all the paralegals, all the,
I can only imagine.
The clinics, all the, study, examining of law, just the question. It's a fascinating, there's so many layers to it.
Lisa, I'm so sorry. We are out of time. Dr. Johnson, how do we contact you? And
the website for the podcasts for the previous episodes are my relationship with Oprah.com and on YouTube. And if you want to reach out for me for counseling, it's Lisa Johnson, LMFT, L as in licensed, M as in marriage, F as in family, T as in therapist.com.
Thank you so much.
See you next
week, and hopefully your sister. Thank you.
This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.